What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. Anyways, as far as Tesla's going, as you guys can tell, we have a nice reversal pattern that's developing. This also resembles a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder, and we're holding up quite well so far. Now, if we end up losing support right over here around this, 400 area, there is a gap to fill back down to 398. But overall, one thing that is good about Tesla, and this is what I was talking about yesterday, I said I want to see if Tesla could hold 390 and make a higher low. So far, we are attempting to do that. And if we continue to hold these supports, if we hold 390 on Tesla, we could attempt to reverse and start pushing even higher. So we're going to be watching to see what's happening with the news and the big catalysts to be coming out. That's going to have a big effect on Tesla stock. Tesla's also to some extent, resembling SPY and the QQQ as we have inverse head and shoulders like patterns trying to develop, but we need to wait for confirmation if they're truly going to be signaling a reversal or not, because there are some things to really watch for. So what's happening to Tesla stock? How is it following the markets? Let's talk about this. Tesla's been cleared to offer ride hailing services in Arizona. This is some great news for them because this allows them to expand over there. And the Arizona Department of Transportation has granted the automaker a transportation network company permit. That's good news that's come out and still making headlines right now. This will allow Tesla to not only expand in Arizona, but just continue to do their testing, continue to eventually, make some more money over there and build more revenue, at least once they are able to officially launch their ride hailing service. I consider this a great piece of news for Tesla. And once again, we're seeing lots of headlines about this. On top of this, Elon Musk is also making some headlines. He was spotted at the White House at a very important dinner. This is one of the first times we've seen him at the White House in a long time. And that's very important as well, at least for Tesla, because of the connection that is involved. So keep that in mind. We're seeing some news about that. Besides that, as you guys know, today is going to be a very, very big day with Nvidia's earnings. Nvidia and Microsoft announced a possible partnership, and then simultaneously, Nvidia has a lot of potential for great growth. We're going to see what they announced during earnings. At the same time, I just want to add on that Nvidia is already down about 4% this week as investors are awaiting their third quarter results. But overall, there's a lot of optimism with their earnings, and we're going to see if this allows for some sort of bounce or not. So Nvidia is going to have a very, very big effect on the way that this overall market moves. So make sure you're ready for their earnings after market close. And on top of that, we also happen to have the European equity markets, which started to bounce a little bit. Could this be a good sign for the American markets? We'll see about that. I do want to add on that we saw a lot of bonds basically rising as a result of the FOMC minutes also coming out for today. And that's going to be another big catalyst. So, what's going on? As a reminder, today's Wednesday, November 19th. There's not much data coming out this morning. Much of the data is very quiet. We got some export and import data. But later on, we have the important bill and bond auctions at 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And at 2 p.m., we have the FOMC minutes. So keep that in mind. The FOMC minutes will be very important, likely causing some volatility. Watch and see what this leads to, because when the minutes come out, we're going to get more insights from the Fed on monetary policy. So I do expect that to be the first big catalyst to cause some volatility. On top of this, I also read that around noon, President Trump will likely be giving a speech. Sometimes his speeches cause volatility, so we'll see if President Trump says anything. But most of the time, when President Trump gives his speeches, he tends to once again pump the markets if he's not announcing new tariffs. Right? If he doesn't do that, then typically President Trump does tend to have a more positive effect on the markets. Right, as long as he's not announcing new tariffs, that's what typically happens. So we'll see what happens once he gives his speech. So those are the two things to watch for when it comes to data. Tomorrow we also have important unemployment and payrolls data coming out, which could also cause volatility, but I'll talk more about those later on. For today, it's just the FOMC minutes, President Trump's speech later on in the afternoon, and finally we have Nvidia's earnings. Target missed some expectations for their earnings, but we're going to see how Nvidia does. Hopefully, Nvidia does very, very well and we get some kind of bounce. And if Nvidia does very well and smashes expectations as they typically do, that could be very, very bullish for the overall market. So we'll see, just to be safe, if that ends up being the case. So with that being said, what do I see for the markets? Looking at Tesla, when you look at the 30 minutes time frame, if we're bullish, you want to see us just continue to make higher highs and higher lows like this. And you want to see Tesla not lose 390. If 390 fails us, then yes, we could be returning to the lows. That would be more bearish. If we dip a little bit, I would not be surprised if we come down a bit with the markets. But if we make a higher low relative to these lows, then we could rebound and start attempting to reverse for 415. On top of this, you could also look at our overall trend line acting as a support, just like that. And this could basically cause this to dip to fill this gap before we continue to uptrend slowly. And then we're going to see if Tesla could kind of like bounce from there. So I presume we're going to be dipping a little bit. Like I talked about yesterday, we could dip a little bit in the morning, get closer to the lower 400s. But as long as we don't lose 390, we could still reaccumulate and try to bounce back up for 415 on Tesla stock. On the 4 hour, we're also attempting to make a higher low. We had this low here, we came up, higher low came up. We're going to see if we continue to make higher lows before we bounce back up to 415. I think that's going to be very, very key for the way at which we end up moving. But overall, there is potential for Tesla to reverse alongside the markets. But I do believe it also depends on the FOMC minutes. It also depends on what happens with the overall market. So keep that in mind. But for now, my notion is that we're going to dip a little bit closer to the low 400s. As long as we don't lose 390, though, we're going to be fine. So even if we come down a bit, we could bounce and we could be looking for a reaccumulation for 415. It's possible Tesla wants to reverse, so we'll see, just to be safe. As long as 390 does not break, we could be trying to reverse. On SPY, okay, we're in a critical place right now. On the 30 minutes time frame, what I'm seeing is that we are dipping a little bit, but there is a possible inverse head and shoulders. Here's a left shoulder, head, right shoulder. I need to see us bounce before hitting 658. I'd like to see us bounce near 660 and get back above 663 for this to reaccumulate and bounce for 668. But if we end up losing 658, that's going to be a bad sign, and we could be dumping back down to 655. So we'll have to see how it goes. But overall, we have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. I do think we dip a little bit. We could be dipping towards 660 to 658. Then we'll see if we reaccumulate and start bouncing with this inverse head and shoulders. So give this the time it needs if we end up getting some kind of bounce or not. I do not want to see us lose 658. I want to see us kind of like dip and bounce here. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. For the QQQ, we have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. And if we break 603, we're looking for a big reversal. But if we lose 694, we could be retesting the lows. I think we dip upon open. There's going to be a bit of a sell-off, but as long as we don't lose 594, we could be looking for a reversal attempt for this inverse head and shoulders. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. On the IWM, we're trying to make higher lows. As long as we don't lose 230, we could dip a little bit, then try to reverse back up towards 235. On ES, we also have an inverse head and shoulders. I want to see if we could bounce near 6,600, or sorry, 6,640, basically. I want to see us basically bounce around here, and then we could be looking for a reversal. If we lose 6,600, it's not going to be the best of signs, so hopefully we try to make a higher low, and we don't take out these lows. And if this inverse head and shoulders pans out, that could be a sign we're about to reverse with Nvidia's earnings. I don't know for sure, though. We need to maintain structure even through all these catalysts. For NQ, there's a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. If we dip to about 24,500, I want to see us basically bounce and continue to reverse like this. If we end up doing the opposite, if we end up losing support at 24,400, it's going to be a bad sign. So hopefully we try to bounce. Same thing with Bitcoin. I want to see higher lows. I do not want to see us lose 90,000. I want to see us basically bounce and continue to break out for 92,500. Tesla, like I said before, inverse head and shoulders over here, and we're trying to reaccumulate. I do not want to see Tesla lose 390. we could dip close to the lower 400s before it tries to bounce. As long as we hold those levels, though, we could reverse later on, push for 415, but it also depends on Nvidia's earnings. Nvidia's been dumping and dumping and dumping and dumping, approaching earnings. When you look at the 4 hour, we basically had this like bearish wedge and a breakout like this. And then we're going to see if this bearish wedge leads to a breakout. Are we about to repeat history, or are we about to see a big rug pull? We'll see about that as time goes on. But overall, I think that we're going to be very patient with this setup and see what ends up happening. Let's see if Nvidia breaks out with the earnings or not. And if it does, that could be bullish for the markets. Aapl needs to get back above 269. If not, we're looking for a test of 264. This resistance becoming support. I favor 264 for some temporary downside for Aapl. Palantir is kind of flat here. Could retest 172, and we'll see if it rejects. AMD could be looking for a 235 retest, and then a few more. We have Coinbase. Could retest 268 to 270 for a small bounce. Amazon showing some weakness. We need to hold at 220 to 222 to bounce. If we lose 220, it's bearish. If we hold it, we could bounce for like 228 and eventually 230. On Meta, I don't want to see us essentially lose 590. I want to see us hold this. If we do, we're looking for an attempt for 604 for a temporary move up. Google has a gap to fill here, so it could be dipping to 285 before it attempts to bounce. And then Microsoft is also on a downtrend. Not looking that strong yet. It is at risk of retesting like 488 to 485. But the VIX, we're going to see if this inverse head and shoulders is completed for about to get a big rejection here, or if it's going to bounce. Be very, very patient. So we will see if these inverse head and shoulders like patterns pan out on SPY and the QQQ or not. Is the bottom in yet? Is the bottom in yet or not? Excuse me. We'll see about that. And for Tesla, it looks like Tesla's attempting to make a higher low, which is a good sign. It's attempting to reverse, make a higher low and then bounce. Could dip to 400, then bounce again and eventually push for 410 and 419. So we're going to see if we make higher lows and reverse on Tesla or not. With that being said, guys, I thank you all so much for listening. Please watch your levels. Tesla may dip upon open, but I want to see us bounce. And if we continue to make higher lows, it's going to be a very good sign. We'll see how well we hold up, and peace out.